Today is Sunday, February 15th, 2026. Another beautiful day here in New England. Getting it kicked off right at 7 a.m. Um, Before I get into today's episode, yesterday, obviously Valentine's Day, it was kind of it was bittersweet in the sense of, being single on Valentine's Day. However, I was surrounded by my community, my CrossFit community, and we had a competition, and it was awesome. It really was a co-ed competition. Didn't get the placements that we wanted, however, last workout wasn't our strong suit. However, it was still fun to get out there and just be around like-minded people and, all fighting for the same goal. And in reality, there was a lot of first timers from our gym doing competitions, and it was absolutely great to see them, you know, thrive and have fun and push themselves to the limit, because that's what it's really all about. So even though I started that tidbit off, it was a great all around day, quick day. I mean, we were done probably, let's say about 12, and most competitions go all day, but this one, the way it was structured and how it flowed it was just so smooth, and it was awesome. So I mean, we were done by 12, hung around, kind of put the gym back together. So I left there about 2 o'clock yesterday, and it was really fun. And today, we got this episode here coming up, which is episode 32, which it's the title of it's discipline over motivation. And previously I used to use motivation for my driving force. However, that that changed because motivation, excuse me, is really in the moment. So discipline is more so over time, and I'll kind of get into that as this episode unfolds. So let's get after it. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is an identity. So, and I stopped waiting to feel ready. So, in that opening line is whatever you do, however you outline, your daily goals, your weekly goals, your monthly goals, your annual goals. Like that's what ultimately you become, which is by, writing stuff down and, just checking boxes. Again, I've said this in the beginning, is you set small goals for yourself throughout your journey, both personal and professional. And you make them so they can be achieved without, without turning you gray or sending you into the nut house, right? And that's where discipline, both professionally and personally, comes into play. And it's great to have motivation, but again, motivation is more of an emotional fix, meaning is that when you hit something, you kind of get that hit of dopamine. You're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm motivated. Let's go. But what happens when you stop or you miss the mark in any sort of capacity? You tend to fall back. You tend to kind of shrink down, and that's not what we want. That's why, writing stuff down, being true to yourself, and achieving, achieving what you want, over those goals is going to make you a better person. This episode is about why discipline became more important to me than inspiration. Why motivation fails, right? So again, I said motivation is emotional. So I'm going to break this down honestly. Motivation depends on your mood. Fades with discomfort, disappears when you're tired, shows up inconsistently, is influenced by emotion. Right, so looking at those, 5 points there is, again, these are all things that, are in the moment, right? And that, And I don't want to sound contradictory, but living in the moment is great. Absolutely, it is. But in the meantime, you have to have an end goal. And if you do not have that end goal, then it doesn't matter how much motivation you have. You're not going to achieve what you've set out for yourself to do. You know, motivation feels powerful, but it's unreliable because it's predicated on those five things, on your mood. When things start to get tough, your motivation goes away. You once had that positive outlook, and then all of a sudden you're gloom and doom, right? When you're tired, you're like, I don't really want to do it. I'm just gonna sit in bed all day. I'm gonna sit on the couch and rot. Like, I mean, here's the thing: is you do need to slow down. Time to time, especially if you're a go-getter, um, and you kind of need to have those recharge days. But as long as they're planned, and that's what you've got to keep in mind. So as I said, when it comes to the reliability of motivation, it's unreliable. So I look at is now I'm going to tie this to like your gym consistency. Like, oh, I'm tired, I'm not going to go to the gym, I'm going to skip a day. No, those are the days that you go, because that's when you'll have your best lifts, your best workout. Posting videos, like, oh, I'm feeling really good, and I want to get this out there, and then all of a sudden you say, I don't want to. you know you have to see how your emotional growth is during this whole aspect, and how you're handling certain things, having the hard conversations, and staying and keeping true to your personal boundaries, and making sure that all of those, all of the second part is something that you can really hang your hat on, and this comes with the cost of waiting to feel like it, right? So when you rely on motivation, you delay hard decisions, you avoid uncomfortable growth, you procrastinate clarity, you stay stuck, and you repeat cycles. So starting from the last one and going backwards is you repeat cycles because it's comfort. That's like it's all about routine. It's all about this is what I'm gonna do regardless of how I'm feeling, and all of that. And you know some cycles are good, but most of them are bad, because again, this is like a defense mechanism, right? So and if you're not aware of what it is, then guess what? You're never going to get out of it, which comes into the fact of you're going to stay stuck. And being stuck is probably one of the worst things that you could be as an adult. Is you have to be able to learn, you have to be able to grow. Excuse me. And you have to be able to move forward and understand that whatever is happening to you personally or professionally, that will pass. It may feel heavy in the moment, but I kid you not, it will pass. It will go by, and you will be able to see that down the road. Which then, that creates clarity. But until then, you're not getting clarity because you are repeating old cycles and you've been stuck. So you're not getting clear answers in what you want, and that's gonna slow your growth. And then when it's time to make those hard decisions, you can't. You simply can't. Here's something that I learned. If I only showed up when I felt like it, I wouldn't be here. Think about that. Every time, life is tough. And, especially if you're blue collar, middle class, came from, humble beginnings. I'm not saying we were, I'm not saying we were poor. I'm not saying we were rich. But how you grew up, and some people were very fortunate. They had the quote unquote silver spoon in their mouth where they didn't have to worry about anything because everything was taken care of. But it all kind of stems back to that. So, if I listened to myself and I didn't push myself the way that I did, then, excuse me, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. I'd be way behind the eight ball. That's not where I want to be. So, what discipline actually is, right? Discipline is alignment with your values, keeping promises to yourself, showing up when it's boring. This is tough because a lot of people get bored these days. You ADHDers, you get bored pretty easy. Doing the right thing without an applause or validation from somebody else. And a lot of people have that too. It's difficult for them. Practicing long-term outcomes. And before I kind of touch on the long-term outcomes, it's that one's one that's hard for me, but I'll get into that in a little bit. More I want to kind of focus on what your alignment of your values and keeping promises to yourself, like those. That's an area of self-worth and self-respect. It's something you deserve personally, and it's your code, right? It's not bro code, it's not ho code, it's your personal code, and that's something that you have to take seriously, because that is that is what's, I don't want to say bare minimum because it's not, but that is like your shield. That is something that if somebody cannot respect what you're, if you can, excuse me, let me rephrase that. If you say you're going to do something and you say, hey, listen, I'm going to pay this bill off in 6 months. You pay the bill off in 6 months. Or you wake up and say, hey, I'm going to make my bed every day. Okay? Wake up and make a bed every day. Or I'm going to wake up every single day at 4 a.m. and keep those promises. And those are the things that when you do that and you're able to do that over time, it's going to become habit, right? It's going to take a little bit in the beginning, but over time, before you know it, man, it's right there. So, those two, and knowing what your values are, and making sure that everything and everyone is aligning with them. Because if that gets knocked out, then you're going to get knocked out, and you don't want that, not at all. So I kind of want to, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about, the boring and doing the right thing. Life is boring for most of us. We tend to wake up, we tend to go to work, we do the gym, we go grocery shopping, come home, take care of the house, do laundry, do dishes, and go to bed. And and that's Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, if you like to go out, go with your girlfriends, go with your boyfriends, like go with the boys, and just be able to kind of get that release. Hey, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But again, life is going to be boring. Parts of it are going to be boring, so expect that. It's okay. You don't have to be going. It's not like FOMO, or you don't have to be going here. You don't have to be going there. You just literally have to be focused on yourself. And again, like this is a big one because I like I like this one simply because it makes you a better overall person. It is when you're doing the right thing, not expecting anything in return. And that's tough because a lot of people need that validation, need that justification, and need to hear it. You have to learn how to be able to do it and not expect anything, right? Because you are ultimately turning yourself into a better person than you were yesterday, right? And that's kind of the goal each day, is to become 1% better. So keep that in mind, when you're doing nice things. Don't do them because you feel obligated to. Do it because that's the type of person that you are. Um, and here's where, long-term outcomes is difficult for me, because I don't think long-term in that sort of sense. Ever since I became sober, I've kind of taken it one day at a time, and there was a time, like obviously my last relationship, I was looking long-term. I was looking towards the future, and that's generally not my MO, but in the sense of, seeing if this woman fit my future. And at the time, she did. Absolutely. I could 100% see, my future with her. I wasn't pushing it. No, no, no. But I definitely did see a future. And it was, and you have to kind of protect that. And now, whether it's with a relationship or it's a personal goal of yours, stick to it. Stick to it. Give yourself a timeline and stick to it. And I guarantee, when that happens, everything will kind of fall into place. So let's talk about the application of discipline in real life. So I'm going to kind of, mix some of the things I've already said and, show you how it works. We want to make this practical and grounded. So we're going to start off by going to the gym when you're tired. Like I said, going to the gym when you're tired is just a service for yourself. It's a service to keep yourself healthy, keep yourself moving, keep yourself active. And I guarantee you, those are going to be the days that you're going to have your best workouts. Believe me, I know. It's happened to me in the past where I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym, but I went to the gym and I felt great afterwards, So you have to do stuff like that. When it comes to reactions, it's not about reacting anymore. It's more about staying quiet. And hear me out on this, is that people will say things to get a rise out of you. AKA, might be rage bait, it might not be, right? So, but here's the thing is, you think about what was just said to you by whomever, and you process that. And then once you have a clear-cut answer, you respond calmly, right? So that's one thing you kind of have to, keep in the back of your head. Another thing is not reaching out to somebody when things are emotional, because emotions, again, that is probably the worst time. You need to give yourself space. You need to give yourself time. You need to give that person time. If it's a personal relationship, or if it's work related. Hey, you know what? Let me mull this over, and let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. Simple as that. Because that way you can process everything properly, and from there, it's then you'll be able to get the clear answer that you want. Staying consistent. With me, consistency is going to the gym. Making these videos every single week. And here I am. Like crazy amount. I've been over 6 months that this has been going on every single week. 7 a.m. is being consistent with that. And now it's like, hey, this is awesome. Now, like, I look forward to these videos simply because, this has now become a part of me. And I truly enjoy this. Again, it's, you know, prioritizing fatherhood. Upcoming this upcoming Saturday, excuse me, the 21st. I'm taking my daughter out to a concert. You know, and we're gonna make a night of it, and to be able to have to be able to do that, and see how happy she is, like that's what life is. And don't get me wrong, it's not about material things. To me, it's more about the time spent. You know, and just being able to be a family, her and I. You know. Another thing is protecting your sleep, is making sure that you're getting enough. And I will say, my sleep over the past few months has been questionable. But hey, once I get back on that track, then guess what? It's going to be much better, and I'll be back to the routine that I was accustomed to. Um, and routines are necessary for me, and I recommend that you have your routines as well, because that is, again, it's part of your structure, it's part of your discipline, it's part of your consistency, it's part of your journey. you know and that's what you have to kind of understand through this whole thing. Is having things adapt to your current lifestyle, what you're doing, and making it all work. So now we're going to go into emotional discipline, right? So there's a few things that I've learned through my healing journey. Is I was before, I'm a phone guy. Like, I like to talk on the phone. I'm not really a big texter, but I was getting into the habit of texting, and that just doesn't work for me anymore. It has nothing behind it. Sure, it's good to keep them updated. Hey, listen, I'm gonna be out here. I'm gonna be out here. But as far as like regular conversations, no, nope, I'm good. Um, because if you get triggered and then all of a sudden you start texting, again, you're doing it from an emotional place. You're not doing it from a logical place. And what you may say is something you may regret. And believe me, I've said certain things in previous relationships that I do regret. But they were said, and that's that, and I can't take it back. And hey, this is where I am because of that. So, another thing is not chasing clarity. And I've said that previously, like, no more. Whatever answers or not, or lack thereof, those are your answers, and you have to learn to accept that. Um, Not, and stop the over explaining. Hey, I've said it once, or I've said it twice, and if they don't get it after the second time, then hey, you don't continue, because you're just losing energy. you know um, Reacting impulsively, again, this kind of goes back to not texting when triggered, but again, it's like if somebody says something to you, you don't automatically fire back with both barrels. You think about it, you see their side of it, and then once you've kind of figured it all out, you 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 give a response. And the last kind of key point to this was learning to sit with discomfort, and that's something that you will grow substantially on, simply because you don't have that out, and you have to deal with kind of everything that's coming your way. And it's good because it helps you build character, helps you be resilient, um, and also being able to grow within there from what has gone on. Because, emotional discipline changed my life more than physical discipline ever did. And because I was seeing things more clearly, and by, stopping the over explaining and all of that, and, protecting my boundaries, trusting my boundaries, protecting my values, and really kind of putting myself first, it changes. Absolutely, it changes. Which then turns into kind of an identity shift. Again, this is something that, where if you're writing stuff down and you're staying to it, and you're checking boxes, then guess what? You're now retaining that information. You are now turning into the person that you have put pen to paper down, right? Or typed it out, whatever you want. But, keep that in mind, 100%. Because I don't rely on motivation anymore. I rely on who I've decided to be. And I don't negotiate with myself. I don't debate standards. And I don't revisit settled decisions. Because once a decision is made, boom, it's done. Moving on. You don't go back to it. Why? You don't need. You've already done it. You've already completed it. This isn't like a cold case where the evidence didn't quite match up. Guess what? I works in the court a lot. Doesn't work in real life. So keep that in mind. Should you try to revisit, settled decisions? Is, whether you made a decision or they made a decision, that's a decision. Now, if they made the decision, you can't change that, no matter what. Only they can change it. And that's a hard truth to get through. But it's something you have to accept, and you have to move on. Motivation starts things. Discipline sustains them. And the man I'm becoming doesn't wait for a feeling. He moves on principle. And I'm gonna end it off with this line, and then kind of add something a little bit extra. If you want a different life, build it on discipline, not emotion. I'm telling you, that discipline turns into consistency, and that's, ultimately what you want. So again, I appreciate, checking in, 7 a.m., well, now it's almost 7:30. But, yeah, I mean, discipline is huge, and it plays more of a factor than you realize. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get you out of that emotional state and get you more into the reality of what life is. So just trust yourself, trust your process. You will get there bit by bit. I kid you not. You will get there bit by bit, but you have to stay consistent, and you have to be disciplined. And I know you can do it. With that said, I appreciate all of you joining me here on this Sunday morning, February 15th. Damn, we're already halfway through the month. Good. For those who think January is the longest month ever, they're like, oh, it's January 53rd, January 62nd. Like, come on. Like, some of the stuff was just kind of, that was crazy to me. But, we're already halfway through February. So, with that being said, thank you again for tuning in. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. And make sure you leave comments. Love to see them, love to answer them. But until then, you know what? Today, I'm probably not going to the gym because of the competition yesterday. So I'm going to kind of give myself a little rest day and, kind of recoup. But I may go to the gym and just kind of just do some machine work or rollouts, and yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go there. I'm just gonna be in the corner, just rolling out, stretching, staying loose, because yesterday was quite a bit, especially one of the workouts. The last workout was, we had to do 100 wall balls. We had to do 100 box jump overs, 24 inches. We had to do 100 kettlebell swings, 53-pound kettlebell for the men and 35-pound kettlebell for the ladies. Well, we did our 100 wall balls, and it took us a fair bit. I want to say it probably took us a little over 6 minutes, which was good for me because wall balls usually are tough. And I remember we had a strategy of doing 6 box jump overs. Well, that first box jump, I jumped, and I didn't think I was going to make it. And I was just like, oh boy. My quads at that point were they were spent. They were done. They didn't want, they were like, no mas. But it was fun. We tried to get through. One round. We didn't. We missed about 29 reps. But, it was just, it was a great learning experience. Great, a lot of fun. The energy, the vibes they were there. And it's really a sight, it was really awesome. So I'm glad that I was able to be a part of that. And we tied for 7th. There was 10 teams. We got tied for 7th. Hey, it's all right. But that last workout was not in our favor whatsoever. We were going against some absolute monsters that were just flying, absolutely flying. So I know I kind of trailed off there, but I just wanted to kind of let you know. But again, today, drink your water, get your fuel, go to the gym, go for a walk, go to church, call up a friend, just say what's going on, call your parents, your mother, your father, tell them you love them, siblings, all of that, because it matters. And until then, you have a great day. We'll talk to you.